we did not scare Tom Baltz away. I'm here with fly fishing legend Tom Baltz. He shared a video with all of us, his 5 confidence flies, and his #1 dry fly was the ParaNymph. So not only did Tom share those flies, fishing tips, tying tips, but you also agreed to come back and tie the ParaNymph for us today. Tom, welcome back.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So listen, without any further ado, let's tie this fly.
Sounds good to me.
All right,
let's do it.
Stay tuned.
So we're going to start off. I like to tie with the calf body hair. So I'll get my thread on here. I'm going to cover the whole hook. On this size, actually the little tiny ones, like, well, say from 18s and down, I do it a little bit differently in that I tie my tail material on first right here so that I can still create a small thin body when I tie my hair on. But this is a size 14, so we're going to tie the hair wing on. Now, one thing that'll make using the hair easier is going to be to spray it with the static guard. Go get the grocery store, the drugstore, spray the hair just lightly. I use a flea comb that I got from the veterinarian's office to comb that out. It helps straighten the hair all out and kind of align it, eliminate any little tangles in there in the underfur. Makes it stack easier, gets that static guard down in there. You spray it, comb it. By the time you actually cut a piece off, it's pretty much dry. You're going to have to eyeball how big of a bunch to use. I can't say, oh, a piece the size of a toothpick or anything else, because the hair of every piece of it's different. It's a natural material, so it's going to vary a little bit. You're going to have to learn how to tie with every new piece of hair you get. I'm going to use the flea comb to get the thin stuff out of there. Probably kind of knew it in the subconscious way before, but Bobby Popovics called it to my attention, not relative to calf body fur. He was tying his, when he first developed his hollow flies with the deer hair, he said, you know, you clip a hunk of hair off, there's 3 lengths of hair in that bundle. There's the long guard hairs, there's the medium length hair, and then there's that short underfur. That's what I'm combing out, is the short underfur. I'm going to stack the rest of it.
Oh, show us this stacker. Let's see this thing. I think
My famous little stacker. 11 o'clock one night, I needed a smaller diameter barrel. Fly shop wasn't open. I have a 40-year accumulation of pieces of things like this. A little bit of an XX75 arrow shaft in my desk drawer. When I was cutting some shafts, I thought, that's nice tubing. I'm going to put a couple pieces in the drawer. Lo and behold, I knew they were there. I have an inventory in that drawer.
Perfect.
In my head. So the barrel's from an old Laggy stacker, one of the first ones, commercial ones on the market. And I still have the rest of it. If I'm going to like do elk hair and big deer hair and stuff, I use the whole original stacker. But for this, I need that short, small diameter because the hair is short. And if I use a large diameter stacker that fits in there, all the hair tips over. It's all laying on its side. It's not stacked at all. A few little taps. I have a piece of this foam. I have a big sheet of it. I stand on it when we're at the shows and I got a concrete floor for 3 days. I stand on this stuff. And also, I'm tying late at night. My wife's sleeping in the next room. This makes a lot less noise than tapping on the desk itself does. So that's the only reason I use it. Yeah, even at the fly fishing show, if I was pounding on the table all weekend, somebody would kill me by Sunday afternoon. Maybe I would just kill myself.
maybe that's the way that you get the crowds in sometime. They're always crowded around you.
So
all right, let's take a look at this.
I pulled some of it out, and now rather than grab that, I'm a right-handed tyer. Rather than grab that with my left hand, I'm going to switch the whole barrel around. Otherwise, I have to get the hair, the points going that way over the eye of the hook anyway. And if I pull it out with my left hand, then I have to change hands with it, and I start to mess my bundle up. This way, note how I take it out. I don't pinch in there and grab. I roll my fingers down. That way I don't mess up the bundle of hair. Same thing when I do change hands. It's the only time I'm going to change hands with it. I'm going to roll my fingers down, grab it, so that I don't mess up my bundle. Another one of the first things that's going to give you problems with the hair, aside from the work of stacking and everything, is tying it on. If I try and tie it right on the top of the hook, I'm doomed to failure. It's going to roll around the hook on me, and I'm never going to get it collected. I'm going to lay it against the side of the hook and take 2 loose turns over it. And then I'm going to rock my hand back see, I got that pretty close to the length I want, so it didn't move very much. But I rocked my hand back, still have a hold of the butts. I just pulled the wing down to the length that I wanted. Wing, post, all the same thing. Now, I'm just going to pull that tight, and you saw the hair roll right up on top of the hook shank. Still got a hold of the butts. We're making turns back toward my fingers to the hook bend, 5, 6 turns, then go forward to the initial tie-in point. Then you can either pick the hair up at an angle and trim it so you have a taper, or as in conversation with the late Dave Brandt, we just trim that off square. And then when I tie my tail material in, I'll butt my tail material right up against that, and there won't be any gaps or anything. So I have my hair tied on. I'm going to just go right between my fingers, pull it up, and make 1 soft turn. Pull it tight. 2, really another half a soft, almost a second turn.
Yeah.
And then 2 turns to lock it in. 4 turns I stood my post up.
Wow.
That way I don't have to screw around with trying to build a thread dam up here. I'd be still wrapping, and I still wouldn't have my wing stood up. It will never work.
The reality is then you build a nice big thread dam, which I have many times, and then whenever you start to wrap dubbing at the end, that dubbing starts to collapse off. It crowds your eye. It makes it tough to tie and tip it. You can see right now, like there's nothing up by the eye. No, nothing.
Actually, I got that basic technique out of Randall Kaufman's old book, How to Tie Dry Flies.
Okay.
Probably it's been out of print for years. I doubt if that many guys tying today have ever even heard of it, much less seen it. Randall tied a lot of flies when he was in college, and so I got that basic idea. I can't remember if he did it exactly like that, if I'm doing it exactly the same as he did, but that's where I got that basic idea of posting that wing up like that. Now, I'm going to tie my hackle in, and I'm going to tie it in from the far side from me. I'm going to lay the stem right across the hook shank. 2 soft turns. I didn't pull that tight at all yet. Now I pulled it tight. And I'm going to tie the hackle right to the post. And I tied it on there so that the underside of the feather is going to be against the post. Notice I use the terms post and wing interchangeably. This is a size 12 fly. I'm going to go up that post about 12 turns. Actually, I don't even have to count them anymore. I've done it enough times. You have to save room to wrap your hackle. And also, there's going to be a thorax on here that's going to eat up some of that too. So you have to give yourself some room there. There's no way that wing's coming out of there under any kind of normal usage. I'm ready to go back and tie in my tail. I'm going to use Zelon, but I have also used other stuff ranging from other colors of synthetic yarns. This is olive brown. This particular batch is pretty dark brown. I don't think it matters a bit. I've used, say, root beer colored crystal flash. Worked amazingly well because I'm trying to suggest an empty nymph shuck back here. So I'm going to tie I split, in this case, a full strand into two strands.
Okay.
If I was tying a smaller fly, I might have split it into 3 strands. So I'm going to go back right here to the end of my butts of my wing. And then I'm going to lay this against the side of the hook the same way as I did the hair when I initially tied the hair in. Pull it down to length. That saves me having to go in there and trim and get the scissor tips near the thread. All kind of bad things can happen. Pretty much nothing good can happen. Aside from time it saves me, I just two quick soft turns, pull it down to length, tighten up, and now continue wrapping back toward the tail of the fly, but not all the way back. You can see I got a little bit of hook shank left there because now I'm going to spin on my material for the body, and when you do that, there's no way you're getting it right all the way up into here. Now, I don't want any bare thread because when I do that, I'm going to finish my turns back to the left until I engage the dubbing around the hook. I said every part of this thing has a function. The stiff post, nice bright orange, I can see it. Stiffer post to wrap my hackle around. Very translucent fiber, looks like that empty nymph shuck. Can also help to float the fly a little bit. All these yarns I tie my little I can see it midge on a curved hook, and right away guys started tying them with this tail on them. Like, you're defeating the purpose. It's that little curved hook, and you don't want to inhibit the back end of the hook going underwater, so you don't tie a tail of a synthetic material on there. But neither here nor there. My body material is hare's mask. I buy a hare's mask, a really good one, costs you like $5 and some change now. Maybe they've gone up a little bit. It's a lot of fur on one of those. If I buy one hare's mask and trim the ears and down the middle of the face and everything, in between the eyes, so to speak, but not the cheeks, and throw that in a blender, it'll fill this bag. Most guys are going to tie for probably years off of that. I go through several a year.
Whenever you go over your hare's mask, do you use a dubbing rake or like a rake and rake it off, scissors?
Scissor it off. It's not my favorite job, but it's not even the worst job in fly tying. So I scissor it all off onto like a big piece of newspaper. You can't fit. I have a full-size blender. When I was looking for little coffee grinder ones, I found them. They were $24.99, sitting right next to a full-size one for $19.99. Blended a lot of fur back in the old Yellow Breeches fly shop. I know even that big one won't blend that much fur at one time. So I bought the big one. Still, at the most, I can only put half of what I trim off of one hare's mask. I have to do a couple of runs of that, and then I hand blend the big clumps together and run it all through there one more time. And you don't put it on for 5 minutes until it grinds it into dust. Just hit a high speed and basically turn it on, count to 3, turn it off.
Okay. You're not blending anything with this. It's just the straight parts of the mask, right?
It's just straight hare's mask. I don't blend anything with it. I've tried different colors at the request of somebody who wanted flies. I've blended Antron and stuff in with it. I never saw any of those work any better than straight hare's mask. In most cases, they don't work as well. I want all these, you see a lot of guard hairs and stuff, a lot of spike to that. I can control it a little bit by adding a little bit more of the soft fur off the mask, but I want it pretty spiky. But if I get it too spiky, I can't. It's hard to tie the little flies, especially. Tying these, usually I just use a little bit of dubbing wax, and I don't ever put dubbing wax on the thread. I just touch my fingertip to it, and then I rub my fingers. I rub the wax on the thread like that. Really, I'm just rubbing it on both fingers. So it gives me a better grip when I'm going to spin my fur on. I seem to dub a little differently than I see everybody else do. I see guys taking a pinch and using their right hand and twisting it on. Then they take another pinch, and now they have a pinch here and a pinch here and a pinch here. None of them are interrelated. None of them are connected. To me, I spin this on with a counterclockwise spin, because I'm pulling my thumb back like this. As I dub, my thumb comes back, and I'm feeding it on in one continuous feed. I can control the amount, thus the thickness, taper, whatever. I don't need a lot of taper in this. But all those hairs from here to here are connected.
Yeah, they're all kind of tightly woven.
They're all kind of connected together. And that's not on there real tight right now, but I can go back to my left, finish my body. Now you can see I have a couple turns of dubbing on there. Now from here, I tighten up that whole thread without mashing all those guard hairs down. See how rough my dubbing still is?
Yeah.
And then I reel up, keep that bobbin at a right angle to the thread. And when I wrap it, I don't flip my wrist like this. Keep a stiff arm. It continue to wrap itself tight, more tightly around the thread as you wind forward. I had to prove that. I got to put a little bit more on there. At the shows one time, somebody said, well, no, if you spin it on there counterclockwise, it'll loosen as you wrap. So I tied him a Sawyer pheasant tail nymph, and I did it the way I just described. Same thing, where I can't flip my wrist because I hold the thread and the wire together. I mean the pheasant tail and the wire together like this, and wrap it up. And I made maybe 5 turns of that hair all around that thread. But by the time I got up to the thorax, I had to undo 10 or 15 turns. They were like, it's not supposed to work, but I'm just telling you that it works.
This is the way I tie it.
It works. I haven't bothered. A lot of times I want to know why it works. I don't care why it works sometimes. So I spin it and I keep it pressed against my finger until I bring that see, I came up there, keep tension on it, right angles, and it didn't unwind at all. I'll make 2 turns up there, turn back there, and a turn. We'll get it going. We'll make a little thorax. and then we clip this off. I didn't clip it off initially. It didn't matter right now, but those first couple turns, if I don't clip it off, if I do clip it off, I can't get a hold of it. It wants to push my tail around the hook. This way I can hold it up and even angled toward me just a little bit, wind it on there. Once I get those first couple of turns on and I get up to about here, it doesn't matter anymore. Clip this off. My friends out west like a longer tail. I like a tail that's roughly this distance right here. So I suppose if you clip it a little bit longer than you like, you can always make it shorter on the string.
That's funny you mentioned that,
You
because
can't make it longer.
whenever I interviewed Tom Rosenbauer, I told him I used to tie my tails, my trilling shucks longer, and over the years they've crept shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And I asked him, "Do you think it matters?" And his answer was probably not. Yeah. And I said, how long do you make yours? He didn't have a good answer. It's like some days shorter, some days longer, and I'm kind of hearing that from you too.
I think that doesn't it doesn't hurt the floatability. It might help it a little bit.
Okay.
So, and I don't care if it's a little mashed up. I saw almost this exact fly in an English magazine called Fly Tying and Fly Fishing years ago. A guy was writing for it, and he came up with a tactical set of flies, which this is definitely a tactical fly, because I can change the wing colors and all that sort of thing. And he was tying it almost exactly the same way, but he couldn't have this loose stuff back here, and it kind of, after a while, it'll get all mucked up and it'll be curly and all messed up. But that's the way those shucks look in the water.
How they look, yeah.
You know, they had theirs furled. He tied it in and furled it and then tied the other end. So he had a nice and neat thing there, but it didn't look like what I want mine to look like. I want that to be a little bit raggedy. Firstly, the hackle plier I use, and I don't get paid. I don't even get a free one from Griffin Manufacturing.
Griffin, come on, send a set to Tom, please.
I'd love it if they did, but I could help them fine tune this thing a little bit too. Although I think there's only so much they can do from a manufacturing standpoint. Yeah. I always am messing with scissors and hackle pliers are two things, fly tying tools that I'm always fooling around with to make them work just the way I want them to work. Right out of the package, this would tie this fly with no problem at all. But if I get down to 20s, 22s, 24s, where I only have little bitty short feathers, I need a hackle plier that'll grip that feather right at the very tip.
Okay.
It's flat on the bottom, and I've seen some that had this angle on both sides, and then they get in the way when you go to turn it. They weren't necessarily made for tying parachutes. This one I can tie parachutes with. I could do other stuff with it too, although almost the only thing I use it for is parachutes. So I have my hackle feather. The back side, the underside is facing the post and me, and I'm going to clip it on here and bring it out here, and just, again, I roll my fingertips, just give it a little pinch. We don't want to break that stem. And get the first turn going. Get the first turn laid on there, and after that, they just go right on there.
Wow, yeah.
You know, it's a lot quicker than doing it by hand. I didn't have to worry about my hackle getting twisted or any number of other things that happen when you don't use these kind of hackle pliers. Had all kind of resistance. Guys want to do it their way. That's fine. You can tie it however you like. But if you try these, you won't do it however you were doing it before. Now, to finish off, I usually just lay this. I come off the back side of the post, and I just lay that right over my thread. I pick my thread up, change hands, and get my thread over the hackle and underneath the hackle that's on the fly. And I have 3/4 of a turn around the hackle and the front of the hook shank. Now I finish my last turn.
Okay.
Going away from me. I didn't mention yet about which way I turn the hackle. Okay.
I was watching that part.
There's two things that really give people problems with parachute flies: the post and the hackle situation. Oh, yeah. I hear all kinds of things about how to finish this fly off. I finish off on the post is more and more common. I change the fly in the vise so that it's pointing down and I can wrap it easier or whatever. I don't have any problem doing it that way myself. If you do a few, you won't either. But if I tie, the standard way is, as far as things are standard in fly tying, with a right-handed tire is going to be tie that feather on so that it's pointing back this way. Then there's only one way you can really wrap it, which is going to be kind of a standard. It's the same motion as I'm wrapping when I'm just wrapping around the hook shank. Over and away. If I turn that into a horizontal plane, the same motion turns out to be a clockwise motion. When I do that, I have the feather coming right towards me and the thread going right away from me. I catch all the fibers from all the previous turns, and as I tie the feather off on the hook shank in front of the post, I'm loosening all my hackle. Loose flies come apart faster than tightly tied flies. So I turn it the other way. When you're sitting there tying flies, sometimes you have a lot of, your mind can wander. What else can I do? What'll happen if I do it this way versus that way? There's not too many choices. I have people come up to me at the show, like, I forget which way you wrap that hackle. I'm going, well, how many flies have you been tying? Well, I haven't had a chance to tie lately. That's usually the answer. But like if you do it one way, if you have to, get a sticky notepad, keep it right there with a pencil, try it. Wrap it one way, whichever way you want. Try it. And then when you go to tie off, if you run into the problem of tying all your fibers down, then make a note of that, which way you turned it before you start turning it, and then turn it the other way next time. You'll figure it out that quick, 2 flies. So I turn this counterclockwise as a right-handed tyer. Now when I tie off, I'm going with the grain of the fly, and I can just go right through that hackle like it's not even there. And then I can just lift this up, snip it out of there.
Before we continue, please pause and like this video, which tells me you enjoyed this style of video and you'd like to see more like it. Thank you ahead of time.
Just to add a little insult to injury in case you did it the other way, finish off the front now.
Okay.
With a little bit of dubbing in there.
This is funny because I'm like wanting to go back and watch all my videos on parachutes. I want to go home and tie a parachute now and see how I tie it compared to you, because it's really fascinating when I watch other tiers tie a fly that's just such a common fly for so many. And you make this one look flawless as always.
5 turns, no head cement. I'd slit my wrist before I'd put head cement on 5 dozen of these things.
Now you sound like Vince Marinero.
You'd be gluing all the fibers together. If you use a whip finish, and you notice I did it by hand, not by one of those tools, use a whip finish on there, 5 turns or so, and as I drew my knot down, let me just pretend I didn't do that. Yeah, I can just tie it right back on. There's a little trick to making your knot real tight with a hand whip, with any whip finish, really. Also, I don't snip that thread out of there. Use the edge of those scissors. They're sharp as heck.
Oh, I noticed.
Just use the edge of the scissor. I don't have to hunt around and pick another tool up. When I do this whip finish, I get it on there. The thread coming off the bobbin holds all the fibers right out of my way. I can see what I'm doing. I can draw it down without these scissors, but every now and then I let go too soon and it pigtails on me, and then it fouls up. I break the thread, throw it in place. Stick my scissor points in there.
Gosh.
Draw that down.
I think that little tip with the scissors there was worth the price of admission for me, because I'm a hand whip finish guy. And you're right, every now and then it just kind of, you lose it and it curls the wrong way, and especially when you're tying bead heads. There's nothing worse than it jumping in front of the bead. And gosh, that's a slick little tip there.
Now, to really set my knot, I'm going to pull on my thread, and then I'm going to get in here with my fingernails and just pinch that knot. If you do that, you're going to feel that thread just tighten up. And then I get in there with the side of my scissors and cut that right out of there. That knot's not coming off.
That's good to
That
go.
fly will catch, if you don't throw it in the bushes, that fly will catch 50 trout.
So, Tom, I see there's hair sticking out on the bottom, but if I'm correct, you want it like that, right?
Yep. The flies I did for that Pennsylvania trout guidebook that Jay Nichols at Headwater Books did.
Yeah.
Jay was talking about my flies and this and that, and I said, oh, and he said, we'll clean those little hairs and stuff up. I said, Jay, if I give you a fly that has hairs sticking out of it, I want the hairs sticking out of it. Yeah. Don't Photoshop, please. You can do what you want with everybody else's flies. Do not Photoshop any of my flies in that book.
That's how you want them.
And he said he did not do that. That's not what he told me anyway.
The other thing
some of them are fuzzy and some of them aren't fuzzy.
We'll leave it like that.
They're not supposed to be.
All right. Well, listen. Let's change the camera angle up. I'm going to pick your brain a little bit more about your ParaNymph. Okay.
All right, you just saw Tom tie his famous ParaNymph. Now let me pick your brain for tying and fishing purposes. When we talk about which side of the hackle you want up, you really want those tips, the points of that hackle upwards so that fly can really get down into the water.
Exactly, exactly. And they're not like a half open umbrella, they're like a full open umbrella, if we can get it that way.
Yeah.
And then when I actually fish with the fly, unless I'm doing a dry dropper and some riffles, then I might grease the whole thing up. But if I saw a big trout rising and I thought this is going to be the fly that catches him and I'm just putting a fresh one on and some sulfurs are coming off, I'm going to tie that fresh new fly on right out of my box, and I'm going to use a paste type fly float. Take your pick. There's a bunch of good ones out there.
Payette paste, something like that.
Not that goopy. I use that for something else. I use that going back to the float fish. And that's a trick with that. The high and dry products are all really excellent.
Stuff. Yeah.
So pick your choice. But a paste type, a little dab on your finger, get it on the hackle. Inevitably going to get it on the post, which is immaterial if the post is sticking up in the air.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
But get it on the hackle. Don't get a whole bunch of it on the body. I'll actually take, after I have my hackle and everything dressed, I may or may not, I go back and forth about putting any on the synthetic, the Zelon tail, the shuck.
Yeah.
It'll kind of help float the back of the fly by itself. But the body of the fly, I'll get a little drop of water, I'll drop my finger in the water and get a little drop of water on it and squeeze that into the body of the fly. So, are we fishing a dry fly or what do we got here?
Now wait, now let's go back, because I know in the first video I asked you, is this an emerger? And you didn't like that use of the word, but now let me kind of morph it in with something you said about, someone that I've known about my whole life, Vince Marinara. You said that Vince, and he's not here to defend himself, by the way, but Vince would not have necessarily approved of this fly. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, Vince, dry flies are dry. If you look at his classic thorax flies, I mean, they're dry. They sit up. The thorax just touches the surface film.
Okay.
But it doesn't want to break it. I mean, he don't want it to break it anyway. And I tie them and fish those flies, on the Latort and so forth. And they sit up. I mean, I've had a little breeze come across the stream and you can see the fly wiggle. I mean, it looks like a real fly out there. So I know not very much of it's in the water.
Okay.
Whereas this fly, half of it, I mean, the important part, the part that's important to the trout, is in the water. You can't see it as it's drifting along. You only see that post. Your hackle is pretty much flushing the surface film.
Okay.
So you just see that colored post. Vince did admire initiative on your part. And the old guys that mentored me, even Joe Humphreys, I learned a tremendous amount from him, from Ed Shank. Those guys didn't very often sit you down, take you by the hand and say, now I'll wrap the thread 2 more times and so forth. They'd give you a hint about one thing to do, and they'd see what you did with that. And if they liked it, they might give you another hint, so forth and so on. So I think Vince, would have appreciated the fact that how I evolved this fly, the thought process behind. Now, it's not to say he would have fished it, but he would have still thought that, okay, give you some credit, I hope. There was a definite thought process. Every single thing on that fly is on there for a reason. It's not there by accident because I thought it would look pretty or anything else. It's there for a particular reason. The grizzly hackle, so it doesn't break the silhouette of the fly up too much. Can have some side benefits, creates movement. I think they take it for a spinner after dark.
Yeah.
But then, of course, the different post colors. The reason I use the hair as opposed to the other things. Oddly enough, though, in the small flies, you have to go to synthetics because the hair gets too bulky.
Well, listen, before we get into more fishing tips with this fly, let's take a quick time out. For those of you who don't know too much about Tom Baltz, go back, watch that Confidence Fly video, but you'll also learn that Tom has been doing this. This is his 50th year guiding. Whenever I call him an ambassador, it's not me. Orvis last year gave him the Lifetime Achievement Award. He's written articles, he's been on videos, he ties and at the fly fishing show, at the International Fly Tying Symposium. Tom gives back in so many different ways. So know that what he's saying is not just something that he just came up with last year. This is something from years of experience on the water with himself fishing and guiding others. So I love the fact that you're sharing this because I don't know, would Vince, would the George Harveys of the world, how much would they tell us, or would they just be giving us these crumbs leading us to the cookie, which
they were throwing crumbs mostly.
I appreciate that. Now, speaking of Vince, let me go back to him. Whenever I ask people mentors, was he a person that you consider a mentor of yours, or did you have that person?
No, absolutely. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have a number of them. I mean, Vince, when I first started working in the Yellow Breeches Fly Shop there in Boiling Springs, the third day I worked there, Vince came in. It's the first time he was ever in there. And then he came in pretty regularly for some years. And then, of course, we did, through the shop, we ran fly fishing schools down here at Allenbury, and that was with Joe Humphreys and Ed Shank. I knew Ed Shank before I ever moved here because I'd see him on the Latort all the time. And then, you know, I worked with those guys in these schools down here for years. So I've basically known Joe Humphreys for 45 years or more now, too.
Jeez.
Ed Shank, unfortunately, is gone. Vince is gone sometime before, and Charlie Fox. All those guys were awesome. And, you know, Charlie, any of the older guys will remember back when Charlie was alive and you'd fish the Latort, you'd get behind his house. If it was a slow day, you'd sit there on the bench they called it the 19th hole, you know, because they all played golf and stuff. And you know, back then trout season ended at the end of June.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know that. Okay.
So yeah, they either went salmon fishing or they sat there. They fished anyway.
Yeah.
But how do you think those guys found out about trico fishing and all that sort of thing?
They had to be
But
on the water.
nonetheless, you know, Charlie would come down there. I mean, he'd talk to you as long as you wanted to sit there.
Yeah.
So we'd sit there for hours sometimes. And he came in the shop too. And there was a tremendous number of other well-known. I mean, Lefty was in regularly. He would show up every now and then on a Saturday with a whole entourage. I mean, Irv Swope was a good friend of Lefty's. It was one of his, I mean, back from when, I think when they were kids, all the Frederick, Maryland crowd. Irv was an awesome photographer. If you look at Lefty's book, Saltwater Fly Fishing, Irv took a lot of those photographs.
Okay.
You know, Paul Jorgensen was tailing along all the time. So I already knew Paul from when I worked in the fly shop in D.C. because Lefty would bring him in there now and then. So we talked fly tying and so forth. So one guy you talk fly tying, with Paul, mostly more salmon flies and things. With Vince, everything. I mean, if it was trout or salmon, he didn't care about bass flies. They made plugs and fish with bait casting rods. Charlie was a big lure carver, so forth. But every one of those guys had their specialties, and they were all super, super interesting. And, you know, they talked about a lot of things, and a lot of it was discussion. I was fishing an awful lot then, too.
Yeah.
And guiding a little bit. I say I've been guiding 50 years, not like doing 100 trips a year for 50 years. But we were still doing some trips, and there's a lot more demand now than there used to be. Still, all these different guys shared different things, and you took a little bit from each different one, and you know, what they were hoping was you to take something they mentioned, basically, and make it your own, do something with it.
Enhance
Not try and copy what they did, but take an idea you got from them and maybe incorporate that into something else that you were doing.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of, you know, what I do today. I came from the old school, so that's how I do it.
That's right. Well, listen, I'm sure someone out there is going to take the ParaNymph and say, this is Tom Baltz's ParaNymph. I'm going to do this with it now. We'll see if Tom approves. Speaking of the ParaNymph, I know we talked about this in that first video. If we look at it in terms of what does it represent? For you, if I said, is it more mayfly, caddisfly, terrestrial, kind of what avenue, what lane do you keep it in?
Mayflies and certain midges and so forth too. I know one time we were on Big Spring and I had this fella out. There was a big trout, I mean like 23 inches, give or take a little bit, was sipping away, a big rainbow. And these are wild fish, not stock ones. There wasn't many bugs around. We watched him for a while and he was working, you know, every now and then he'd come up and like, what's around? So only thing I could see, actually these midges were blood red, but the orientation of them in the surface and just under the surface, the way they laid in there, the only thing I had even close was a size 18 ParaNymph. There's nothing, nothing red on it.
Yeah.
That fish ate that on the first cast.
Oh my God. You
That'd be
heard
pretty
it
awesome.
here. ParaNymph, mayfly, a merger imitation, which you don't call it a merger. What's the word that you prefer to use?
I don't call it that. I call it a floating nymph platform.
Floating nymph, okay.
You know, the reason I don't like it, to use the emerger term is because it doesn't really tell you very much. It is an emerger of a sort. It's a trap fly. It can be what Swisher and Richards called stillborns.
Yeah.
You know, flies are drifting along with the shuck still attached to them.
Sure.
They didn't quite make it out and they're in trouble. The fish are pounding them. It could be an emerger, it could be a stillborn. You know, Charlie Meck really popularized and called attention to the trailing shuck sort of thing.
Yeah.
At first, he was just taking a piece of nylon stocking, origin of which he never did mention, but anyway, he would just roll a piece of that up and just literally stick it on the hook.
Yeah.
It wasn't even tied into the fly. But I started thinking more about that, and that wasn't the first time that I ever heard of shucks. Actually, probably it was Vince. We were fishing the lake out in Boiling Springs, right behind the fly shop. And back then, some evenings I told Vince we were catching trout out there. You'd watch them cruising around. We were throwing long leaders and long casts, and you'd see them cruising around using this classic Sawyer pheasant tail nymph. Anything English, Vince was all about that. We'd go out there, and then you'd see these fish that looked like they were rising, only they really weren't rising. They were taking these little midge pupa right in the surface fin.
Yeah.
So Vince took a little fly that was not unlike a little tiny Henryville special, not quite all the stuff on it. Olive-ish body, a little starling wing on it, and he was tying a little clump of partridge on there, and he said, "That's the shuck." So that may be the first time I ever really paid attention to that. But after that, I started to pay more and more attention to it, and I look at flies like, for instance, maybe the most popular dry fly out there, a Parachute Adams, and I look at the tail on that. To me, that fly is popular. Yes, it catches fish. It's not even a design, it's a total accident. The regular Adams is a great fly, but the Parachute Adams, I hate that white post. You can't find it in the glare, you can't find it in the foam and the bubbles, and it has opaque hackle on it, and that tail was just built for sucking water up. They didn't change enough of the parts of it to make it a new design. It works in spite of itself, that's my opinion. But I looked at that tail, I said, that's a shuck. The way that tail's tied, it doesn't help float the fly.
No.
Why is it even on there? If you can't answer why is that on there, then don't put it on there, or put it on there differently.
It's funny you say that because, and I'll go back to, we're talking about nymphs now. Whenever I finished this book, I interviewed all these anglers about their Euronymphs and about their Perdigons and their Frenchies, and most of them will use either partridge or Coq de Leon for the tail. And I asked every single one of them, is it important and do you use it? And almost every single one of them said, no, it's not important. And I said, you put a tail on? They said, yes. And I said, why? And they said, because I just do. And they didn't have a good answer to say this. It's almost like a confidence thing where they just look at it and it's meant to have a tail. Whether or not it imitates the natural, great. They don't think it matters to the fish, but it matters to their confidence.
Right. Well, that's actually, I consider that a reason.
Yeah.
Not all the reasons are going to be directly pertinent to the fish. If you don't like the fly, then you don't fish it very well, and that means you don't catch many fish on it.
That's right. Before I wrap this up, I know many of you are going to have questions for Tom. You can obviously always email me, leave them down below in the comment section. Is it okay if they email you as well?
Sure.
So you can email him for guiding questions. If you'd like to order some of these flies or any of your tying and fishing questions, head those over his way. The last thing I'll probe you on, this isn't just a pattern that's specific for where we are now, South Central Pennsylvania. This is a pattern you've had luck on all around. Why do you think that? Where else have you had success with this fly?
It's worked everywhere I've fished it, which is mostly Pennsylvania, a little bit up in New York State, and out west, both in Colorado on the South Platte, so forth. Great PMD hatch, put on a ParaNymph.
Yeah.
On the Missouri, on the Madison. The first time I ever fished the Madison, we were with Joe Moore, who presently is one of the owners at Big Sky Anglers.
Okay.
He was a fairly young guide then, and we were just drifting along. We were between his favorite spots. I realized after a while. I did have the front of the boat, but I was just keeping it, keeping that fly on the water. And he says, what are you doing? We're between my good spots. I said, I'm just keeping that fly on the seam. And then he goes like, what are you using? Let me see that fly.
I
So
take
now
it you were catching fish between his two favorite spots. Yeah.
So now he carries them in his store. Big Sky, he put me on to hook me up with Montana Fly Company, and they carry them in the store there.
Okay.
So
there's just something about this general outline of this fly where it doesn't necessarily represent anything specifically, but it can represent so many different things out there, and it catches lots of fish.
Well, that position of that fly and that crippled, highly available look to it, I think is a very strong attractor to the fish. If you watch real mayflies hatching and they're drifting along and you see this little trout rising down here, maybe it's a big trout. He's eating some bugs, he's getting some of them, And then you'll see one drifting along and you're going like, oh man, that one's dead. He's gonna get swallowed up in a split second here.
Yes.
And just at that time, right in front of that fish, the fly takes off and flies away. You might think that's random chance. I don't think that's random at all. These flies have been doing this stuff for millions of years without that much change in their physical makeup. They're high, if that fish is in the water, if he moves any part of him, it displaces water. So I think as he starts to come up, he's creating a bulge, and that fly knows it. And if he can get away, he's getting away.
That's its way to say,
And
Mother
sometimes he
Nature's way
can't
to
get
save
away.
it. Yeah.
But that fly didn't fly away by accident. I've watched big trout rising on a retort. You'd see a hump that looked like it was 6 inches high when they were coming up. But mostly the average fish, you're not going to see that. You'd have to really be looking close. But they move water. They're moving every time they swim around. They move here or there in the water. They're moving water. And I think those flies can tell. They feel that, and they're trying to get away. They're doing everything they can. That's why a lot of times I think your bigger trout, unless you got like a classic Hendrickson hatch and it's a cold day and the flies are really riding the water for a long time, sure. But sulfurs are notorious, especially little pale evening duns, for getting off the water in a hurry. And you got a lot of little trout splashing at them, but some of those bigger trout are a little more hesitant to waste energy on
They
a
know
bug
what could go down.
that's not there when they get there. Takes off right before they eat it. So you got this fly trapped in the surface film. But the different wing colors, why would I use orange versus yellow versus black versus pink even? I can't get a lot of guys to fish pink.
I will. I'll
will
take
too.
all of Tom's pink ones.
I will too. You can see it.
Yes.
I wear pink shirts. I went and saw a Taylor Swift concert.
Me too.
With a friend.
I wasn't wearing
And
pink.
my wife. Well, had I known, I would have gotten an extra 10% off for a free bucket of popcorn.
I didn't
would have
know
worn a
that.
pink shirt.
Oh, man.
I found out after we got there.
Your pink era.
But
jeez.
I use the orange the most. It's the most visible on a medium to large size stream. You're fishing in the sunlight. It's the most visible. There's not a lot of bright orange stuff. It doesn't have to be fluorescent orange, just bright orange. There's not that much bright orange stuff floating along on the stream.
No way.
So I can
But there
see
is
that.
white. There's a reason.
There's a lot of white
I don't
stuff.
like white. And I know a lot of people say, let's go dun. It's very, it looks like a mayfly.
just as bad as
you
white.
can't see it. It blends in so well. Now, if you have really slow moving water, you can sell me on that. But once you get any type of gradient, it is so tough to see that, especially at distance.
I only tie them that way, like little sulfur parachutes and stuff, because guys want that more
I get it.
natural look.
I get
don't
it.
fish with them myself.
I don't either. You can look in my
I'll
box.
fish that ParaNymph, orange wing most of the time. I tie the orange one for Harry Murray in Virginia, but that I mentioned, I call it, I can see it ant, that parachute ant. I tie that with orange mostly, because ants are mostly a daytime fly. But where Harry Murray's guys are fishing is down in Shenandoah Park. There are big old trees down there, and those streams are all heavily shaded. So that yellowish wing shows up really well against the dark background. Doesn't show up all that well out here today on the yellow breeches because it's not much better than white when it comes to throwing it up in that faster water. And I love dry fly fishing in fast water. It's boring on flat water, I think, but I do it too. And then I use the black wing. I probably first heard about that from Lefty Cray, and I don't know where he got it. He didn't make it up. I always had a few of those flies in my box. We were out on the Missouri in Montana, and that water's flat as glass and just looked like a mirror. It was an overcast afternoon, low light, and I mean glare. You could not see the brighter winged flies. We were anchored up on a pod. I mean, these fish were like 18, 19 to 22 inches, all of them. They were sucking bugs in, and I'm in the back of the boat making a long cast and stack bending out to get my fly down there. And a couple different times I'd see all of a sudden a whole bunch of commotion, fish all swimming around. I know fish ate my fly and spit it out and got spooked and scared the other ones. That happened a couple times. I thought, I can't see that orange wing. There's nothing else. I'm not going to be able to see any of it. Putting that black one on, 19.5-inch rainbow on the first drift. I could see that fly way below us because that black wing silhouetted. It's not going to work that well on a riffle. Half the water's dark and half the water's bright.
Evening
Flat
too.
water is awesome.
Evening too. I used to guide in the Delaware, and that was like our secret at dusk. You put on black, you can see it. Like, sure, you want to throw a giant white wolf, you might be able to see that too, but you throw that black fly at dusk, you can really see that wing.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, I figured it out. I caught one fish, and then my friend in the front of the boat said, John, put this on. And then he caught a couple of fish, and then we moved on. So
Yeah.
then, you know, I know how the guides operate. I don't blame them. They don't want to pound all those fish because they got some guys tomorrow and
Yep.
the next
Oh,
day
yeah.
and so forth. But yeah, that black was awesome. But I fish the orange the most, highly visible on most of your streams that are, even little streams, it's pretty visible.
Okay.
So,
Well, there we go. We got Tom Baltz to tie his famous ParaNymph. I've been dying to get this video filmed for I don't know how many years. Tom, thank you again so much.
my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. There's a reason I've been wanting to record Tom Baltz, and it's because he's a legend of fly fishing, as you saw in this video. Let's not stop this fun yet. There's a playlist that just popped up on the screen. It involves some of the other interviews I've done with other legends of fly fishing, including more videos from Tom. Click on that playlist, watch and enjoy those videos. You can thank me later.